Morning for me, Claudia.
Okay, well, we're on now. So good morning, everybody. It is Wonderful Wednesday with Gila Zak. Now, Gila, I met you at Hypnothoughts Live a couple of years ago, and we met in the pool. And we had such a meaty conversation. I know we went on for about 2 hours. and we were just like really, really rabbiting at each other. And we obviously do similar work. We were just really singing on the same hymn sheet. And I love that. So, we've become friends, and I admire you. And I tell you what, your presentations are just always the best. I absolutely love them, and I've learned so much from you. So, Gila, thank you for being on here. And
You're welcome.
Take it away. Tell us about you, and I know you have some exciting things to share with us. So, tell us about you. Tell us all about you. How you got into hypnosis.
About me, how did I get into hypnosis? Well, I've always known about hypnosis. Just because the family that I was raised in, they were very, at the time, I came of age in the early 70s. So we had books on Edgar Cayce. There was stuff with Jose Silva, which is basically self-hypnosis. And so I grew up with all of that, but it was kind of in the periphery. I knew it was there. And then as I got older, I knew that hypnosis was like for stop smoking or past life regression, but it just didn't dawn on me. It wasn't in my zeitgeist that it was there for other types of therapy. And then my daughter, when she was in 4th grade, I want to say, she developed emetophobia, which is the fear of vomiting. And she had this she had gotten the stomach flu. And so we lived with it for about 1.5 years, and it just progressively got worse and worse to where it was initially a fear of having the experience again, but then it turned into really phobic. And so I took her to a hypnotist, and I remember sitting there going, I want to learn how to do this. And that's how I became a hypnotist. And I'm in my 12th year now, and I've seen over 1,500 people that at least I've remembered to document in my spreadsheet. But yeah, I work full time here in Los Osos, California. It's a tiny little beach area in between LA and San Francisco. And if anybody's ever been to Morro Bay, the Rock, it's quite a big tourist coastal town, and I'm just about 5-10 minutes away. But yeah, that's how I got into it.
I did not know that. And you've got something else up your sleeve. You have this sticker. Go on, show us. And it's
yes.
Again, who is
So this is the sticker for my new YouTube channel, and it's for the G Spot. So you can find me on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. YouTube is at the G Spot Hypnotherapy. And my son was twisting my arm for a couple of years. He's like, Mom, you need to have a YouTube channel. You need to have a YouTube channel. I'm like, everybody's got one. There's plenty of people doing it, and I just don't need to do it. And, he kind of said what you said to me when we were catching up here, that there's only one of you, and your clients love you. So, and your voice. And then, of course, he's learning some language patterns, I think. He says, Mom, I know that getting hypnosis out to the world at large is important to you. And the more people online talking about hypnosis, the more the algorithm's going to put it in front of people. And so that's what, made me finally decide to do it. So yeah, every Friday, a new video, someone asks me a question, and, or I come up with a topic, and we just talk about how hypnosis can help.
Brilliant. I love that. And he's quite right, because actually that is what this is about, is like getting people to understand that hypnosis it's everywhere. It's a belief system, and we can help people change out that belief system. Now, Gila, you also do some really cool things like handwriting analysis. So tell us more about that and how you got into that. And I know you've just been speaking at with some, who was it? Some teenagers? Go for it. Tell us.
Yeah. So handwriting analysis was part of my foundational training for hypnotherapy at HMI College of Hypnotherapy in Los Angeles. So it was basically part of the curriculum, and you didn't get your diploma unless you were proficient and passed it. So I found it really interesting because, one of the things that we as hypnotists really, really, I think, underestimate is that you have to know who's in front of you. You have to know who you're hypnotizing. And the more information you have, then you're going to be able to put them into hypnosis in a way that they recognize, that feels more comfortable to them. It's also going to tell you through the handwriting, you can see exactly what their suggestibility is. Are they more direct and literal? Are they more inferential? Are they more analytical? Are they somebody who's going to respond to suggestions that the way a person would feel in their physical body versus their more emotional or intellectual state? And where are they on that somnambulistic scale? So I think handwriting is an incredible resource to help us to get to know our clients so that we can be the better hypnotists for them.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're training it as well, aren't you, at Hypnotherapy
Yes.
Live? You're
Yep.
doing
I've spoken on it a couple of times at Hypnothoughts, one in overall, and then another one specific to how it plays into our sexual personality, our sexual suggestibility, as it were, how we relate to other people in intimate partner relationships, but also in other relationships as well, but primarily in your intimate partner relationship. And the feedback that I got from that each time was just incredible. So when Scott and Stephanie reached out and said, we want you to teach your pre or post, I'm like, I know what it's going to be. It's going to be handwriting. So yeah, it's going to be a comprehensive overview at Hypnothoughts Live this year, one day post conference, but you're also going to walk away with a resource tool to be able to go back, because it's a lot of information, but there's going to be a little booklet to go back and say, what does this letter mean? What does that letter mean? And it's going to be really helpful.
Yeah, no, I remember I was in that presentation that you did, because you also very into, like, so there are more people who are emotional, and then you've got your more physical people. And you gave that talk first, and then, as you say, you tied it in with the handwriting. So, because you created that, didn't you, with the emotional and physical people?
No. Again, it's interesting because the first time I went to Hypnothoughts was in 2016, and you hear about Gil Boyne, you hear about, just all of the names, right? That were the ones, the Ellmans, everybody who was there, creating the more modern hypnosis, but no one there, except for a couple of people, had heard of Dr. John Kappas, and he founded the first ever nationally accredited college of hypnotherapy over 50 years ago in Los Angeles. And he was more that emotional, intellectual, sexual, which means that he really didn't need to have a lot of verbal affirmations. He didn't need a lot of physical contact. He was really more about the nuts and bolts of running his clinic. And it was through his clinic that he formulated this particular theory, and he used it as his thesis when he himself became a psychotherapist. But essentially, just from observing people and observing his own clients in working with them, he realized that there were two kind of baseline ways that people interact. And one is the emotional sexual and the physical sexual. And there'll be a talk on this coming out on my YouTube pretty soon, because I'm going to break it down into what that is. But essentially, in a nutshell, what it means is that, first of all, you're never 100% on the spectrum. You're 60-40, 70-30, 55-45. The highest I've ever seen has been like a 95% physical or a 90% emo. But the emotionals, we call them emotionals because they feel their emotions very strongly. They often just don't know how to communicate them. They're not the ones who are going to come out and touch and want to kiss and get right in your face. They're going to be the ones who are a little bit more observant before they can relax. And they're in their heads first. The physicals kind of live in their body. They communicate with their body. They're the ones who, they come and they meet you the first time. You, Claudia, are definitely a physical. You want to come in, and you want to get right in there. And when you see somebody, it's this big bear hug. So when we understand why this is important, then it really helps us when we work with clients with relationships issues, with sexual dysfunctions or sexual issues, or even when it comes to the big one that we all see, which is social anxiety. So yeah, I didn't come up with ENP, but I love it. And I'm happy to share it whenever I can, because I think everybody that I tell it to, they're like, especially my clients, like, how do you know what's going on in our bedroom? How do you know what's going on at the dinner table? I'm like, well, it's this really cool theory.
Yeah. And it is interesting because everybody automatically wants to go, well, what am I? And there were some questions that you asked everybody, and it was, and of course, like you said, not everybody is all one thing, where there's an 80-20 or 70-30 or 50-50.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because sometimes when we were younger, we may have been like 90% physical. And as we mature,
Yep.
we become a little bit less physical, and it could change into 60-40.
Yep.
So and again, and I remember it's like it's and tell me if I'm wrong, that you'll find that most relationships, there's you'll have one of you being the physical and one of you being the emotional. So
Yes, you're right. You remember well. You were a good student, Claudia.
yeah. I find it fascinating.
Good listening. It is. Yeah. So we generally tend to attract our equal and opposite partner when it comes to the spectrum of this. And you're right. Children very often, unless they are on the spectrum of autism or there's some other thing that's going on, children are going to be more physical, because that's just the way that they are in their world. But as we grow up and mature, as we start getting into our own romantic relationships, this is where it starts to change. And usually our sexual suggestibility is set by around the age of 15 because of the way the family dynamic is. And when we learn about the 4 core traits that help us to form who we are, our sexual personality, then you can see how this happens through puberty in relationship and context to, is it a single parent household? Is it 2 parents? What that's like. But also as we get older, when we get wounded, if we go into a relationship and we get rejected, that physical is going to take it really personally. And it can actually make them do one of 2 things. They can shut down for a bit. We can call them a shutdown physical, or they can become even more needy, even more insecure. Mm-hmm. And then if the emotional gets, if the relationship comes to an end for an emo, if they've been with a high physical person, they're going to intellectualize that breakup, and they'll probably go into a recovery relationship with another emo, because that person's not going to be so needy physically for time and affection and attention. But the problem there is that then the spark really isn't there, because it's the equal and opposite that kind of is the chemistry that makes the spark.
Yes, no, interesting. And again, I remember you saying that our children can often copy and become what the more dominant parent, because I know my daughter's physical as well. So I was like mostly her the parent, because my husband was away so much in the Royal Navy.
It's the secondary caregiver, not the dominant parent. It's the secondary caregiver that the child usually models after, unless there's a reason not to. And this would be an example. One of the partners is traveling all the time. So that then becomes almost like a single parent household, and the child will identify, the primary as the person who's there all the time, and the secondary. The other thing is that what that can change is that if there is alcoholism or abuse or verbal abuse or violence in the home, the child may not want to identify with secondary caregiver if that is the person perpetrating that behavior. So they will then model after their primary caregiver. So there's lots of little nuances that go into it, but that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah. It's fascinating. No, I love it, and so much of it just makes sense. So I would encourage anybody to be watching Gila's YouTube channel, because it's all about us, and how we can, because that's all about communication then, isn't it?
It is. It's about how we communicate verbally, non-verbally, emotionally, and physically. And and people look at me and they often think I'm a physical sexual because, I'm tend to be a little bit more social and extroverted, and those are more what we would call surface traits. But I've also created a defense, and a defense is either it's a skill that we learn that helps us to be who we need to be in the world. So I have a defense, which is a skill I've developed to be more effusive when I need to. But in my personal life and in my quiet life, I'm much more subdued. So this is why I can be at Hypnothoughts and I'm up there and I'm just into it and I'm engaging everybody. And then everybody comes up and they want to ask the questions. And I'm just like, okay, now I need to go to my room and just kind of check out for a minute. But then also we can create a defense against the opposite if there's been a form of trauma. So someone might really be a physical, but they have, again, shut down and there's a defense now and they act and behave as an emo.
Yeah. Interesting, isn't it? And then and then that's why I suppose some people have those partners, that they'll just go into a relationship really quickly, just to soothe that. Or somebody who is needy, a physical person who is needy, will just keep getting those needs met for a while, and they're getting their needs met. That's just the way.
And where the therapy comes into play is you get to. The theory is you don't want to have a sexual suggestibility that expresses itself more than 70%, because that means there's some trauma that's caused the person to be either a really extreme emo or a really extreme fizz. So for the extreme fizz that's really, really high, usually they were rejected. There's abandonment issues. And so the reason why this theory is so helpful is because it helps you to see where the client, if you can bring down the neediness and help that physical be more confident and recognize that the rejections weren't about them personally, it can be mind-blowing to them. Wait a minute, it wasn't about me. And we know how powerful hypnosis can be to shift the story and see history in a different context. And so then the neediness comes down, and they're going to feel more comfortable. They're not going to feel that constant, people pleasing, like me. Everybody needs, I need to be friends with everybody. The fear of missing out, the FOMO. And then with the emos, when we look at why, if they're not on the spectrum of autism, I want to be really clear about that. If they're just an average everyday person who has a really high emo, why is that? Why are they so shut down? Why are they so disconnected from their body? And if that's the case, it's usually trauma again, and we can go in with the hypnosis and help them with that.
Yeah, it's about reframing it, or getting them to reframe it for themselves.
Yeah.
In their own minds. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, because then it's so much more powerful. So yes, hypnosis, I mean, it's a fabulous tool, and we're all in it every day.
It's happening all the time.
So exactly. So what's next? What's next for you, Gila?
Well, what's next for me is I do love sharing about hypnosis and public speaking. And like you said, I got invited to speak at a psychology class at the local high school. And I'm also going to be speaking at the local university, Cal Poly. It's a pretty prestigious university in the United States here. And I'm going to be speaking to their mental health students as well. And so for me, I want to continue to get out and bring what this is to people who either don't know about it, or they're studying and learning it, and or studying and learning mental health, and they can see what a valuable adjunct it would be. I know that you also know IEMT, integral eye movement therapy. I am working my best to get a group of psychotherapists, because I have a ton of clients who are psychotherapists. And I want to get a training here, bring Lori Donnelly and have her train here in San Luis Obispo County, because my clients that are therapists are like, what is this? So that's what's next for me. Is I'm a networker. I do like to connect people. And I think the more people doing Your Bunny Talk, the more people doing IEMT, all these other things that really augment what we do as hypnotists, the better. So
yeah. No, I agree. I agree, absolutely. And so it's interesting. You mentioned about the youngsters. Are you finding that they're so much more open-minded, and asking these questions about what hypnosis is? Like they're really like properly interested, instead of just like
they were. I'm telling you, there were 33 kids in the class, and they were rapt. They were just, because I first went into it and, building rapport for, who here is totally afraid of hypnosis, who's just like freaked out that I'm even here, and some people, few people raise their hands, they're looking away. And, how many of you are curious about it? And a bunch of hands. How many of you are excited about it in hands? So I think once I broke it down to them, what hypnosis is and what it isn't, those questions just came, and they asked some really insightful ones. And, one of them I thought was really great. It's like, how deep into someone's head can you go with hypnotherapy?
Yes, it's amazing, isn't it? And because I have literally found this as well. So I'm, as you said, I'm a chatter. I chat to people, and I was at my local shopping place, and there was actually one on the till, and there was one sort of like packing my stuff, and they always ask about my accent, or these two did, and then I don't know, got on to about hypnosis, hypnotherapy anyway, and they were fast, and the questions they asked were absolutely phenomenal. And they, gave them a website, because I've got free resources on there. Yeah. And so, it's like, so that's brilliant, you know.
Mhm.
And they were both most definitely under 20. And how wonderful that the youngsters
Yeah.
are being so more open-minded and so self-aware that they actually can do this themselves
Yeah.
without, they can create change for themselves without having to take medication.
Yeah. And I think too, you know, one of the things that I really wanted to impart to everybody, but especially the people at this age, because the earlier you start in your life, recognizing that life isn't happening to you, it's happening for you, and other people's negative opinions have nothing about to do with you. The earlier you learn this, the longer you get to live your life not feeling shame or guilt or embarrassment. I think it kind of supercharges someone's own evolutionary, you know, process to self-actualization. But the thing that I really, these students that really had them so interested is when I talked about what suggestibility is and that everything is a suggestion. Are you buying what they're selling? Your cell phone is hypnotizing you. You know, if somebody gives you a shitty comment, are you going to accept that or reject it? And I took props with me. And I like to use these things they're these squishy balls, and I give them to clients too. This is your thought ball. And I'm going to teach you how to change the emotions and feelings inside of your thoughts, because thoughts in and of themselves are neutral, right? This mouse is just a mouse, but the energy and the emotions I assign to it are what's important. But it was so funny because when I did the exercise and I throw the ball and say, if you catch it, you're going to catch my suggestion. And so I say, you are amazing. And the girl catches it. And then, you know, I saying all these good things and tossing it out. So then I had the kids practice, and I gave it to one student. I said, now just say something neutral or kind about me. And they tossed me the ball and they said, I love your glasses. And I caught it. And I'm like, oh, thank you. That's fantastic. And then I gave it to another student who had kind of been like this the whole time, just kind of like looking at me. And so I purposely chose this person. And I said, here's the ball. Now say something that's not particularly kind to me. And he looks at me and he goes, I don't like your shoes. And he throws the ball at me, and I just bop the ball away. And I turn around. I'm like, you know what? That's cool. I don't need for you to like my shoes. And then I said, you know what? I kind of don't like your shoes either, dude. And he just went like, well, I don't have to accept that. I'm like, you're right. You got it. And it was just such a funny thing, because the whole class, when he said, well, I don't like your shoes, they just kind of gasped. But it was a perfect learning tool to say, we don't have to like each other's shoes. Isn't that a metaphor? We can walk our own path, and we don't have to like each other's shoes, and that's okay. Yeah, it's not about us.
Well, it goes back to you're okay, I'm okay, we're okay. Yeah. I love that. I might use that.
Yeah. I'll send you the link of where to buy them. I get them on Amazon. I mean, I try not to buy anything from them, but it's the only place I can get them is cheap, because I give them out so much. But they're just these little squishy rubber balls, you know.
Yeah. Oh, I've got plenty of stuff. I've got dogs, so I've got plenty of things. Oh, that is just brilliant. It could be anything, though. Yeah. Don't throw stones, guys. Not real ones. That's brilliant. Okay, thank you for being on, Gila. We could go on chatting forever, I know.
I think so.
So thank you for watching, everybody. And it's goodbye from me, Claudia Rickard. And it's goodbye from...
Goodbye from Gila Zak.
There you go. All right, so take care, everybody. Thank you for watching.